The red words "access denied" stared back at me, covering a balance of $480,000. I dialed my parents, expecting panic, but my father answered with a terrifying calm, as if he had been waiting for this call. Then the banker spoke. "A power of attorney was just filed by your father." I realized they were not just freezing my assets, they were erasing my right to be myself before 12 o'clock. My name is Emery Parker, and until this morning, I was under the impression that I was a free woman of 34 years. I believed that the life I had built, the career I managed, and the inheritance left to me by my grandmother were unequivocally mine. That illusion shattered at exactly 8:45 in the morning on a Tuesday, dissolved by the pixels of an iPhone screen. I was standing in the kitchen of my apartment, the one I paid for with my own salary, waiting for the coffee machine to finish its cycle. It was a mundane morning. The sun was cutting through the blinds, casting striped shadows across the granite island. I picked up my phone to check my balance. It was a habit, a quick mental check-in before the day began. I tapped the icon for the Brightwell Trust and Savings app. Usually, the Face ID would catch my features. The little padlock icon would unlock, and I would see the comforting blue interface showing my checking account and the separate trust fund line item. Not today. The Face ID icon spun for a second, then failed. I frowned, wiping the screen with my thumb, thinking perhaps a smudge of lotion was interfering with the sensor. I typed in my passcode, the 6 digits I had used for 3 years. The screen shook. The universal digital gesture for incorrect. I typed it again, slower this time, enunciating each tap with the pad of my finger. 1, 9, 8, 9, 2, 4. The screen did not shake this time. Instead, it went white. A second later, a banner unfurled across the top in a shade of red that was aggressive and final. "Access denied." Beneath it, in smaller gray text, was a message that made the coffee turning cold in my stomach feel like ice. "Contact administrator. Your credentials have been revoked." I stared at the word revoked, not suspended, not locked for security, revoked. That was a word used for criminals or children. I felt a spike of adrenaline. That primitive fight or flight response. But I forced it down. It had to be a glitch. Brightwell was a boutique bank, the kind that prided itself on personal relationships. But their app was notoriously finicky after updates. Then the notification banner dropped down from the top of the screen. It was an email from the bank's security team. I tapped it, bypassing the app entirely to open my mail client. The subject line was succinct. Security alert. Access information updated. I opened the email. It was a generic template, the kind generated by a server farm somewhere in a basement. It read, "Dear customer, the login credentials, recovery email, and two-factor authentication phone number associated with your account have been successfully updated. If you made this change, no further action is required." I scanned the bottom of the email, looking for the standard safety net. Usually, these emails included a link that said, "If this was not you, click here immediately." I looked for it. I scrolled down. I zoomed in. It was not there. There was no lifeline. There was no panic button. The system simply assumed that whoever had made these changes had the absolute authority to do so. The system assumed that I, the Emery Parker holding the phone, no longer existed. I rushed to my laptop, sitting open on the dining table. My fingers flew across the keyboard as I navigated to the desktop site. I typed in my username. User not found. I tried to use the forgot password function. I entered my social security number to verify my identity. The screen refreshed instantly. "We cannot process this request. Please contact the primary account holder." I was the primary account holder. I had been since I turned 25, and the trust fully vested in my name. There was no one else. My hand was trembling as I reached for my phone again. My first instinct was to call the bank, but a darker, heavier instinct overrode it. This was not a hacker in a basement in a foreign country. A hacker drains the account and runs. They do not change the administrative privileges to lock you out while leaving the architecture intact. This felt personal. This felt like administrative violence. I pulled up my contacts. I hovered over the name Dad. If anyone knew what was happening with the bank, it would be Graham. He had been the original trustee before I took over. He still banked at Brightwell. Maybe there was a system-wide error affecting the Parker family accounts. I needed him to tell me I was overreacting. I needed him to tell me to breathe. I pressed call. The phone did not even complete the first ring. It was picked up instantly, as if he had been sitting with the device in his hand, staring at the screen, waiting for my name to appear. Emery, Graham said. There was no greeting, no question, just my name, spoken with a flatness that sent a shiver down my spine. It was the tone he used during board meetings, the tone he used when he was firing someone but wanted to sound benevolent. Dad, I said, my voice tighter than I wanted it to be. Something is wrong with my bank account. It says, access denied. I think I've been hacked. I need you to call your contact at Brightwell. There was a pause on the other end. It was not a pause of confusion. It was a pause of patience. The kind a parent gives a toddler who is explaining why they drew on the walls. You haven't been hacked. Emery, he said. His voice was terrifyingly calm, even measured. What I gripped the edge of the granite counter. What do you mean? We anticipated you would react this way, he said. Listen to me. Do not make a scene. Do not call the police. This is an internal family matter. My brain stuttered. The words did not make sense together. React this way. Internal matter, Dad. I cannot access my money, my trust fund, my checking. It is all gone. The app says my credentials are revoked. They aren't gone, he said, dragging out the vowels as if explaining a complex concept to a slow student. They have been secured. We had to step in. Emery, you are not stable, a new voice cut in. It was my mother, Vanessa. She must have been sitting right next to him, likely leaning in toward the speakerphone. Her voice was breathless, laced with that high-pitched, frantic concern she performed so well for neighbors and church friends. Mom, I asked, what are you talking about? We have seen the signs, she said, rushing her words, the stress, the isolation. You are not yourself. You are spiraling. Honey, we could not just stand by and watch you destroy your future. We are doing this because we love you. The family will manage the accounts for a time, just until you are better. I felt the blood drain from my face. I looked around my pristine kitchen, my organized life. I had a job as a senior data analyst. I paid my taxes. I went to Pilates 3 times a week. I had never been hospitalized. I had never been arrested. I had a credit score of 820. I am perfectly fine. I said, my voice dropping an octave. I am 34 years old. You cannot just take my money. That is theft. It is a conservatorship measure, Graham corrected, his voice overlapping mine, crushing my protest with legal weight. A power of attorney. It was necessary. You do not have my power of attorney, I snapped. I never signed anything. Technically, Sloane's voice chimed in. I froze. My younger sister was there too. The whole family, gathered around the conference table in my parents' study, deciding my fate before I had even finished my morning coffee. Dad is just protecting you from yourself. Sloane said. Her voice held a smirk I could practically hear through the connection. You know you get emotional. You make bad choices when you are emotional. Remember the incident with the caterer? That was 4 years ago, I said, my hand squeezing the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. And I was right. They overcharged us by $2,000. Graham said, you are getting worked up now. This is exactly why we had to act. You are escalating. I closed my eyes. I took a breath, in through the nose, out through the mouth. The realization washed over me like cold ocean water. This was not a conversation. This was a script. They were building a narrative. Every word I said, every rise in my inflection, every accusation I made would be used as evidence of my instability. If I screamed, I was hysterical. If I cried, I was depressed. If I threatened them, I was dangerous. They had locked me out of my money, but they were trying to lock me out of my credibility. I understood then that I was not speaking to my parents. I was speaking to the opposition. I looked at the clock on the microwave. 8:52 in the morning. I needed to be physically present at the bank. I needed to stand in front of a human being who was not related to me. Arguments over the phone were ephemeral. They could claim I said anything. I forced my muscles to relax. I forced my voice to go dead. "Okay," I said. The silence on the other end was heavy. They had expected a fight. They had expected me to beg. "Okay," Vanessa asked. "Suspicious. If you think this is best," I said, lying through my teeth. I was shocked. "But maybe you are right. I have been tired lately." "Exactly," Graham said, the relief audible. He thought he had won. He thought he had bullied me into submission in under 3 minutes. "We will handle the finances. You just focus on getting well. We can discuss an allowance next week." An allowance. The word tasted like ash. "Okay," I repeated. "I am going to go lie down." "Good girl," Graham said. I pressed the red button to end the call. The silence of the apartment rushed back in, but now it felt different. It felt like a siege. I did not go lie down. I walked to the entryway and grabbed my car keys. My hands were steady now. The shock had burned off, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. They had the digital keys, but they did not have me. Not yet. I grabbed my purse, checking for my physical wallet, my driver's license, my passport card, which I kept in the side pocket. I took a folder of documents from my desk, tax returns from last year. Hard copies I kept because I was paranoid. Today, paranoia was my greatest asset. I walked out the door, locking it behind me. I took the elevator down to the garage, ignoring the friendly nod of the doorman. I could not speak to anyone. I felt like if I opened my mouth, the rage would spill out and flood the lobby. I got into my car, a gray sedan that was practical and paid off. I started the engine. The dashboard lit up. I plugged my phone into the console, and the map interface appeared on the center screen. I selected the address for the main branch of Brightwell Trust and Savings downtown. It was a 20-minute drive. I pulled out of the garage, squinting against the morning sun. The city looked normal. People were walking dogs. Delivery trucks were double parked. But my reality had shifted into a parallel dimension where my parents were thieves and my sister was an accomplice. Why today, I asked myself as I merged into traffic. Then I remembered. The quarterly distribution. The trust fund released dividends on the 15th of the month. But the big tranche, the vesting period for the second tier of the principal, was scheduled for today. $465,000 was set to become liquid at 12 noon. Until today, it was principal, locked away in investments. Today, at noon, it became cash, transferable, withdrawal-ready cash. They were not protecting me. They were intercepting a shipment. I gripped the steering wheel. I had to get to the bank before noon. If I could physically identify myself, if I could show them my face and my ID, I could freeze it. I could stop the transfer. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat. I glanced at the screen. It was not a text from my parents. It was not a notification from the bank. It was a standard message interface. But the sender ID was suppressed. Unknown number. I waited for a red light before I looked closer. The message was short. It popped up on the car's display screen, white text on a black background, stark and terrifying. It read, "Don't go to the branch. It's already done." I stared at the screen. The light turned green. Behind me, a horn honked. I pressed the accelerator, my heart hammering against my ribs. Someone was watching. Someone knew exactly where I was going. My parents, Sloan. Or someone inside the bank. "It is already done." "No." I whispered to the empty car. "It is not done. It is not noon yet." I drove faster, weaving through the morning traffic. I did not care about the speed limit. I did not care about safety. I was a woman erased, racing to prove I still existed before the clock struck 12. The line between family drama and financial homicide had been crossed, and I was the target. The downtown branch of Brightwell Trust and Savings was designed to smell like old money. It was a scent composed of leather polish, conditioned air, and the specific dusty silence of thick carpet absorbing the sound of Italian loafers. I walked through the revolving glass doors and felt the atmosphere hit me like a physical wave. Usually, this silence was comforting. It was meant to signal stability. It was meant to say that the volatile world outside did not matter here because inside these walls, wealth was preserved in amber. Today, the silence felt complicit. I bypassed the main teller line. The tellers were for people depositing paychecks or buying cashier's checks. I walked straight to the glass partition that separated the general lobby from the private wealth management offices. The receptionist, a woman named Deborah, who had known my face for 5 years, looked up. She offered a practiced smile that did not quite reach her eyes. The kind of smile you give to a client who might be important or might be a nuisance, depending on their balance. "I need to see a banker immediately," I said. I did not return her smile. I did not ask how her weekend was. Deborah hesitated, her fingers hovering over her keyboard. "Do you have an appointment, Ms. Parker?" I said, "But if I do not see someone in the next 5 minutes, I will be causing a scene that will make your security guard very uncomfortable." Deborah blinked. She saw something in my face. It was not hysteria. It was the cold, hard geometry of desperation. She picked up her phone and dialed a 3-digit extension. She murmured something low, nodded, and then hung up. "Mr. Mendez is available," she said. "Third door on the left." I walked past her without saying thank you. Jared Mendez was new to my account, but I knew the type. He was in his late 40s, wearing a suit that cost more than my first car, and he had the tired, cynical eyes of a man who had spent 2 decades watching rich families tear each other apart over decimal points. He did not stand up when I entered. He just gestured to the leather chair opposite his desk. "Close the door, please," he said. I pushed the heavy oak door shut until it clicked. The room was soundproofed. I sat down and placed my driver's license and my passport card on the mahogany desk. I did not wait for him to ask. "My account is locked," I said. "The app says access denied. My parents told me 10 minutes ago that they have taken control of my assets. I want to know how that is possible when I'm sitting right here, fully competent and very much not consenting to this." Jared looked at the IDs. He did not pick them up. He turned to his dual monitors and began to type. The sound of his keystrokes was loud in the small room. He typed for a long time. Then he stopped. He did not look at me. He stared at the screen, his expression unreadable. He tapped a key, waited, and tapped it again. Then he leaned back in his chair, clasping his hands over his stomach. "Ms. Parker," he said, his voice devoid of any customer service warmth. It was pure procedural steel. "Your digital access was revoked at 8:30 this morning. The credentials were reset by the administrator." "I am the administrator," I said. "Not anymore," Jared said. He turned the monitor slightly so I could see the edge of the interface. There was a red banner across the top of my file. It looked just like the one on my phone, but here it had a code attached to it. "The system shows that a power of attorney document was filed and processed yesterday afternoon," Jared said. "It grants full administrative control over your trust and personal checking accounts to the agent named in the document." He looked at the screen again. "Graham Parker." He read. I felt a surge of nausea, but I swallowed it down. I sat up straighter. "I did not sign a power of attorney," I said. My voice was steady. "I have not signed a legal document in 6 months. I have not authorized my father to act on my behalf. Whatever you have in that system is a forgery." Jared looked at me then. He really looked at me. He was assessing me, looking for dilated pupils, looking for tremors, looking for the instability my parents had claimed existed. He was trying to decide if I was a victim or a liability. "The document was notarized," he said. "It includes a physician's capacity statement declaring you temporarily unfit to manage financial affairs due to an acute mental health crisis." I let out a short, sharp laugh. It was a reflex. "I am a data analyst at a Fortune 500 company." I said, "I was at work yesterday. I have never seen a psychiatrist in my life. My father is lying." Jared did not argue. He did not agree. He simply turned back to the keyboard. If you are challenging the validity of the power of attorney, that is a legal matter, he said. We can file a dispute, but that takes time. The legal department has to review the notary log. They have to contact the physician. I do not have time. I said. I leaned forward. Why did they do it today? Jared. Why this morning? Jared hesitated. He clicked open a submenu on his screen. His eyes narrowed slightly. Because there is a transaction pending, he said softly. I knew it. The validation felt like a punch to the gut. How much, I asked. Jared looked at the numbers. $465,000. He said. I closed my eyes for a second. That was it. That was the vesting amount. That was my freedom. It is scheduled for a wire transfer. Jared continued. Reading the data, destination is an external account. The wire is queued for release at 12 noon today. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was 9:15. Stop it, I said. Cancel the wire. Jared shook his head. I cannot just cancel it. Ms. Parker, not while the account is under a power of attorney that the bank currently recognizes as valid. If I cancel it based on your verbal instruction, I am violating the instructions of the legal representative on file. If Graham Parker is your legal guardian in the system, he has the right to move that money. So you are going to let him steal $500,000 from me because he filled out a form I asked. My voice rose, just a fraction. Jared held up a hand. I did not say that. I said I cannot just cancel it, but I can pause everything. He leaned forward, his elbows on the desk. If you tell me right now, formally, that this is theft, I have to open a fraud case. Standard procedure for internal family fraud allegations is aggressive. It is a nuclear option. Explain. I said, if I flag this as fraud, I place a hard freeze on the entire portfolio. Jared said, we call it a fraud hold. It stops all outgoing money. It cancels all pending wires, including the ones scheduled for noon. It revokes all access cards, all check writing privileges, and all digital logins. He paused to let that sink in. It locks him out, Jared said, but it also locks you out. If I press this button, nobody touches a dime of this money until our corporate security team and potentially the police clear the title. It could take weeks. It could take months. You will not be able to buy groceries with these accounts. You will not be able to pay rent. You will be frozen. I looked at the cursor blinking on his screen. If I do not do it, I asked, then the wire goes out at 12 noon. Jared said, once it leaves the bank, it is gone. We cannot pull a wire back from an external institution once it clears. The choice was binary. I could be poor for a few months, or I could be poor forever. My parents had calculated this. They thought I would be too scared to freeze my own life. They thought I would try to negotiate, try to plead with them, and while I was busy crying on the phone, the clock would tick past noon. They underestimated how much I hated losing. Do it, I said. Jared looked at me, verifying my intent. You understand what this means? He asked. You are cutting off your own supply. I would rather starve than let them win. I said, lock it down. Freeze everything. Jared nodded. It was a small, sharp movement. He respected that. He began to type rapidly. He navigated through several security screens. I watched as he entered a code. Then another. A new window popped up. Bright yellow. Initiating fraud protocol level 3, he muttered, more to himself than to me. Suspected familial exploitation. Unauthorized instrument. He hit the enter key with a definitive snap. Done, he said. The pending transfer status has changed to suspended. The account is frozen. I let out a breath I did not know I was holding. My shoulders dropped. I was safe. For now. The money was not mine. But it was not theirs either. It was in purgatory. Jared did not relax. He kept looking at the screen, scrolling through the log of activity that had occurred over the last 24 hours. He frowned. Ms. Parker, he said, I need to ask you a standard verification question. It is part of the fraud intake form. Okay, I said. He turned his chair to face me fully. His expression was serious. To the best of your knowledge, has your identification been lost or stolen recently? No. I said. He nodded. Then he asked the next question. The question that changed the temperature in the room. Were you in this branch yesterday? He asked. I shook my head. No. I told you. I was at work all day. I work in the financial district, 20 miles from here. I did not leave the office between 8 in the morning and 6 in the evening. I can pull my badge logs if you need them. Jared looked at me. Then he looked at the screen. Then he looked back at me. That is strange, he said slowly. Why? I asked. A cold prickle of unease started at the base of my neck. Because the power of attorney was not mailed in. Jared said, it was not faxed. It was not uploaded through the portal. He tapped the screen with his index finger. It was presented in person. He said, at this branch, yesterday at 2:15 in the afternoon. I stared at him. The room felt suddenly very small. My father was here, I asked. Yes, Jared said. Graham Parker was here. But he was not alone. He turned the monitor all the way around so I could see the notes in the compliance log. The notes said, primary account holder present for verification. ID checked. Signature witnessed in person. Jared looked me in the eye. According to our records, Ms. Parker, you were here yesterday. You sat in a chair. You showed your ID. And you signed that document in front of a notary. I felt the blood drain from my face. That is impossible, I whispered. Jared did not blink. If you were not here, he said, his voice dropping to a hush, then who was the woman sitting next to your father? The question hung in the air between us, heavy and terrifying. It was one thing to steal my money using paper and digital tricks. It was another thing entirely to bring a physical human being into the bank to wear my face. They had not just forged a signature, they had cast an actress. I looked at the closed door of the office. Suddenly, the quiet bank did not feel safe at all. It felt like a stage where a play had been performed, and I was the only one who did not know my lines. I need to see the security footage, I said. Jared nodded slowly. I think you do, he said. He reached for the phone. This was no longer just a financial dispute. We had crossed the line into criminal impersonation, and as Jared picked up the receiver to call the security department, I realized that my parents were not just greedy, they were meticulous, and they had found someone who looked enough like me to fool a bank. But they had forgotten one thing. I was still here, and I had just frozen the assets they had gone to such great lengths to steal. The war had officially begun. The monitor on Jared's desk was high definition, crisp enough to show every pixel of the document that had stolen my life. He rotated the screen further toward me, maximizing the window so the PDF filled the entire display. It was the power of attorney. I leaned in, my breath catching in my throat. Seeing your own name on a legal document you did not touch is a violation that feels physical. It is like watching a video of yourself sleeping. Look at the signature, Jared said. He did not point. He let me find it. I scanned to the bottom of the second page. There it was. Emery, a Parker. It was written in blue ink. At a glance, it was perfect. The slant was right. The loop of the P was aggressive, just the way I wrote it. But as I stared at it, the uncanny valley effect took over. It was my signature, but it was dead. The rhythm was wrong. When I signed my name, the connection between the R and the Y is a single, fluid motion. Here, there was a microscopic hesitation, a tiny accumulation of ink where the pen had paused. The forger had lifted their hand, perhaps to check a reference. Before completing the stroke, it was not a signature written by muscle memory. It was a signature that had been drawn. That is close, I whispered. That is terrifyingly close. It is good enough to pass a teller who sees 100 signatures a day, Jared admitted. But look at the notary seal. He scrolled down. The stamp was there. State of New York. Commission expires 2026. The name on the stamp was vague, smudged slightly in the scanning process. But the signature of the notary was clear. We will run the notary's commission number, Jared said. But this is the part that legally allowed us to bypass your two-factor authentication. He opened a second file. This one was on letterhead. The header read, Crestview Psychiatric Partners. I have never heard of them, I said immediately. Read the body text, Jared said. I read it. The letter was dated 2 days ago. To whom it may concern. I am the attending physician for Ms. Emery Parker. This letter is to certify that Ms. Parker is currently under my care for an acute episode of manic psychosis and financial disorientation. Due to her current state, she lacks the capacity to make informed financial decisions or manage her estate. It is my medical recommendation that her appointed agent be granted immediate emergency access to stabilize her affairs. Signed, Dr. Aris Thorne, M.D. I felt the blood pound in my ears. Financial disorientation. It was a term designed to sound clinical but meant absolutely nothing. It was a phrase invented to scare a banker. I am not manic, I said, my voice low and dangerous, and I certainly do not have financial disorientation. I manage datasets for a living. Jared nodded. He did not look surprised. The letter references an attachment, he said, the HIPAA release form. He clicked to the next page, and that was where they slipped. The document had been faxed. Modern banking is almost entirely digital, but the legal and medical worlds still cling to fax machines for verified transmission. At the very top of the PDF, in the thin margin that most people ignore, was the TTI, the Transmit Terminal Identification. It was the digital stamp of the machine that had sent the document. Jared zoomed in on the header. It showed the date, the time, and the sending number. Do you recognize this number? Jared asked. I looked at the digits. The area code was local. The exchange was familiar. I focused on the last 4 digits. 4492. My stomach dropped. I knew that number. I had memorized it when I was 10 years old. It was the landline that sat on the antique oak desk in my mother's sunroom. It was the line she used for her garden club calls and her charity auctions. That is my parents' house, I said. The words tasted like copper. That is not a doctor's office. That is my mother's fax machine. Jared's eyes narrowed. Are you certain? He asked. I pulled out my phone. I opened my contact card for Mom. I held the screen up to his monitor. The numbers matched perfectly. Home fax ending in 4492. They did not even try to hide it. I said, they faxed a fake doctor's note from their own living room. They thought nobody would check the header. It was arrogance. Pure, unadulterated arrogance. Vanessa Parker believed she was untouchable. She believed that if she presented a document on nice paper with a medical logo, the world would simply bow down and accept it because she was Vanessa Parker. She did not think a banker would zoom in to 400% magnification. Jared typed a note into his file. Source of medical documentation conflicts with provider letterhead, he muttered as he typed. Document originated from a residential line associated with the beneficiary of the power of attorney. He stopped typing and looked at me. This changes the narrative. Ms. Parker, this is not just a dispute about capacity. This is wire fraud manufacturing. He clicked on one last file. This is the ID they used to verify your identity when the document was uploaded for initial review, before they came in person. He said, the image popped up. It was a scan of a driver's license. My face looked back at me, but it was a younger version. My hair was longer. My cheeks were rounder. That license expired 3 years ago. I said, I looked closer at the scan. There was a scratch across the laminate over my chin. I remembered that scratch. I had dropped my keys in a parking lot in 2019. I thought I lost this. I said, I got a replacement. I must have left the old one in a file cabinet at their house when I moved out. Jared pointed to the edges of the image. Look at the background. He said, the license had not been scanned on a flatbed scanner. It had been photographed. You could see the grain of a wooden table underneath it, and in the very corner of the frame, just barely visible, was the edge of a coaster. A cork coaster with a floral pattern. I have those coasters. I said, I gave them to my mother for Christmas. Jared sat back. So, we have a fake doctor's note faxed from your mother's house and an expired ID photographed on your mother's table, used to authorize a power of attorney that you say you never signed. He looked at the door. I need to get the branch manager, he said. This is above my pay grade. He picked up his desk phone and dialed an internal extension. "Renee," he said, "I need you in Office 3. Now, yes, it is a code red on the Parker Trust." 2 minutes later, the door opened. Renee Talbot did not look like a bank manager. She looked like a corporate attorney who had decided to work in retail banking for the thrill of the hunt. She was tall, wearing a charcoal suit that was tailored to within an inch of its life. Her hair was a silver bob, sharp enough to cut glass. She walked in, closed the door, and looked from Jared to me. The air in the room changed instantly. The customer service veneer evaporated. Renee was not here to offer me coffee. She was here to assess liability. Jared gave her the 60-second summary. He showed her the signature. He showed her the fax header. He showed her the floral coaster in the ID photo. Renee listened without interrupting. She did not gasp. She did not shake her head. She stood perfectly still, absorbing the disaster. When Jared finished, she turned to me. "Ms. Parker," she said. Her voice was cool, efficient. "I am going to ask you 3 questions. Your answers will determine whether I call the police or whether I call our legal department to escort you out." I nodded. "Ask them." 1, Renee said. "Did you, at any point, verbally or in writing, express to your parents that you wanted them to help you manage your finances?" "No," I said. 2. Have you been under the care of a doctor, Aris Thorne, at any point in the last 5 years? "No," I said. "I have never met a doctor, Aris Thorne." 3, Renee said. She leaned in slightly. "Are you currently under the influence of any medication, narcotics, or under duress from a third party to be here right now? I am here because my app said access denied." I said, "I am sober, I am furious, and I am alone." Renee held my gaze for a long 5 seconds. She was looking for the lie. She did not find it. "Okay," she said. She turned to Jared. "Keep the fraud hold. Elevate it to level 4. That means no overrides from any other branch. If Graham Parker walks into a branch in Miami, I want the screen to flash red." She turned back to the screen. "Seal the upload trail." She commanded, "I want the metadata from that fax header preserved. Do not just screenshot it. Archive the raw log file. If this goes to court, that timestamp is our smoking gun." Then she looked at the doctor's letter again. "I want verification on this notary and this doctor." She said, "Do not call the number on the letterhead. Find the independent listing for Crestview Psychiatric Partners, if it even exists. Call their main switchboard. Ask for Dr. Thorne. Ask if he has a patient named Emery Parker. Record the call." She looked at me. "And you?" she said. She slid a piece of paper across the desk. It was a blank affidavit. "This is a sworn statement of unauthorized activity." Renee said, "It is a legal instrument. If you sign this, and it turns out you are lying, you are committing perjury and bank fraud. You will go to prison." I picked up the pen. It was a heavy black ballpoint, but, Renee continued, "If you sign this, it gives me the authority to tell your father to go to hell if he calls back. It legally indemnifies the bank for freezing the funds against the instructions of the power of attorney." She tapped the paper. "I need you to write a statement. Keep it short. Keep it factual." I clicked the pen. I did not hesitate. I wrote in block letters, pressing down hard enough to indent the paper. I did not sign the power of attorney dated January 25th. I did not authorize Graham Parker or Vanessa Parker to act as my agents. I have not been hospitalized. The medical documentation provided is fraudulent. I signed my name at the bottom, the real signature, the one with the fluid connection between the R and the Y, the one that flowed like water, not like a drawing. I pushed the paper back to Renee. Renee picked it up. She looked at the signature on the paper, then she looked at the signature on the screen. The difference was subtle to an amateur, but to her, it was screaming. "Okay," she said. She handed the paper to Jared. "Scan this. Attach it to the case file." She looked at me, and for the first time, her expression softened just a fraction. It was not pity. It was the look of a general acknowledging a soldier in the trenches. "We are going to lock this down," Renee said, "but you need to understand something. Ms. Parker, we are blocking the money. That means your parents are going to find out within the hour. When that wire does not hit at 12 noon, they will know you are here. Let them know. I said. Renee nodded. Jared, she said, check the security cameras again. I want a clear shot of the woman they brought in yesterday. If we are going to claim impersonation, I need a face. Jared clicked into the security archive. I sat back in the leather chair. The affidavit was signed. The line was drawn. I had just formally accused my parents of a felony. There was no going back to Sunday dinners after this. There was no going back to polite texts about holidays. I had just nuked the bridge, and I was standing on the edge of the crater, waiting for the fallout. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. I watched Jared navigate the camera interface. Accessing lobby camera 2. Jared said. Timestamp 14:15. The video feed loaded. It was grainy, but clear enough. I saw the revolving doors spin. There they were. Graham in his tan trench coat, Vanessa in her navy blazer. They walked with purpose. They looked like the perfect power couple. And walking between them, slightly behind, was a woman. She was wearing a long coat and a scarf wrapped high around her neck. She had large sunglasses on. Her hair was the same color as mine, pulled back in a low bun, the way I often wore it for work. Pause, Renee commanded. Jared hit the spacebar. Zoom in on the subject, Renee said. The image pixelated as Jared zoomed in. The woman was keeping her head down. It was a smart disguise, generic enough to pass, specific enough to match the ID, if you did not look too closely. But then, I saw it. Jared. I said, advance it frame by frame. Look at her arm when she reaches for the counter. Jared tapped the arrow key. Click, click, click. The woman in the video reached out to take the pen from the teller. As she did, her coat sleeve rode up just an inch. There, on the inside of her wrist, was a dark smudge. Zoom in. I said, it was blurry, but it was undeniable. It was a tattoo, a small black geometric shape. I do not have a tattoo. I said. Renee leaned closer to the screen. That is your proof, she said. That is the biological inconsistencies we need. She stood up straight. Jared, export that frame. Save it to the chain of custody. She looked at me. We are calling the police. Ms. Parker, this is no longer a civil dispute. This is identity theft in progress inside a federally insured institution. The reality of her words hit me. Police. Cops. My parents in handcuffs. No. They were too smart for that. They would talk their way out of it. They would blame the illness. But the police meant a report. A report meant a paper trail that Graham could not bribe away. Do it, I said. Call them. Renee picked up the phone on the desk. She did not dial 911. She dialed a direct line. This is Renee Talbot at the downtown branch. She said into the receiver, I have a priority fraud situation. Impersonation of an account holder. Suspects are likely still in possession of compromised identity documents. Yes, we need a unit. She hung up. They are on their way. She said. I looked at the frozen image of the woman on the screen, the fake Emery. Who was she? How much had they paid her? Or was she someone who owed them a favor? My parents had turned my identity into a costume. They had handed it to a stranger and said, Here, go be her so we can rob her. I felt a cold rage settle in my chest, displacing the fear. I was not the victim anymore. I was the witness. And I was going to make sure that every single piece of paper, every fax header, and every pixel of surveillance footage was used to bury them. The silence in the office following Renee's call to the police was heavy, filled only by the hum of the computer tower and the distant, muffled sounds of commerce outside the door. We were no longer just banker and client. We were co-conspirators in a siege. Jared turned the monitor so that the screen faced the center of the room, creating a makeshift theater for the horror show we were about to watch in high definition. I need the security feed isolated, Renee said, her voice dropping to a command frequency. She was standing behind Jared's chair, her arms crossed, her eyes locked on the display. Pull the lobby wide angle and the teller counter close up. I want to see their faces. I want to see their hands. Jared typed a command, and the screen split into 4 quadrants. The footage rewound, the digital time code in the corner spooling backward until it hit 14:15 yesterday. There they were. Seeing my parents on a security camera felt like watching a nature documentary about predators stalking a watering hole. They did not look nervous. That was the first thing that struck me. A blow to the chest that stole my breath. Criminals are supposed to look anxious. They are supposed to check over their shoulders. Graham and Vanessa Parker looked like they owned the building. My father, Graham, was wearing his signature tan trench coat, unbuttoned to reveal a crisp suit. He walked with that wide, expansive stride, the walk of a man who expects doors to open before he reaches them. He approached the teller line not with hesitation, but with an air of benevolent impatience. My mother, Vanessa, was on his right. She was doing most of the acting. I watched her lean in toward the teller, her hand fluttering to her chest, performing the role of the distraught mother. I could practically hear her voice through the silent video, the breathless explanation about her poor, unstable daughter. And then, there was the third figure, the imposter. She walked between them, flanked like a prisoner or a protected asset. She was smaller than me, slightly, but she wore a coat that was oversized. Swallowing her frame, she wore a scarf wrapped high, covering her chin and mouth, and large, dark sunglasses that obscured her eyes. It was a caricature of illness. It was exactly what someone looks like when they are trying to hide a hangover or a bad plastic surgery. But my parents had clearly sold it as a mental breakdown. She sat down on the stool at the counter. Her posture was slumped, defeated. It was a good performance. She looked like a woman who had given up on the world, a woman who needed her daddy to handle the big, scary numbers. "It makes me sick," I said, the words tasting like bile. "They made me look weak." "They made you look compliant," Renee corrected. "Watch the interaction." I watched. The teller, a young man I did not recognize, pushed a document across the marble counter. It was the power of attorney. The woman, the fake Emery, did not even read it. She just reached out. "Freeze it there," Renee said. Jared hit the spacebar. The image halted. The woman's hand was extended, holding the pen. Her coat sleeve had ridden up as she reached forward. It was a small detail, a failure of costume design. "Zoom in on the right wrist," Renee ordered. The image expanded, the pixels blurred, then sharpened as the software processed the frame. There it was, a tattoo. It was small, maybe an inch across. It looked like a geometric fox or a wolf. Sharp lines in black ink. It was modern, trendy, and completely undeniable. I rolled up my own right sleeve. I placed my arm next to the screen. My skin was bare, pale, unblemished, and utterly devoid of ink. "I have no tattoos," I said, my voice shaking with a cold rage. "I have never had a tattoo. I have never even considered a tattoo." Renee looked from my arm to the screen, then back to my arm. She nodded. A single, sharp movement of confirmation. Biometric mismatch. She stated, "It is definitive." Jared stared at the screen, his face pale. He looked at the fake Emery, then at me. "So they brought someone here to play you," he said. The sentence hung in the air, vibrating with a horrifying implication. This was not just theft. Theft is taking a wallet. Theft is hacking a password. This was something far more intimate and far more violative. They had cast a role. They had held auditions. Or perhaps they had just called in a favor. But they had physically replaced me in the narrative of my own life. They had erased me and inserted a puppet who would sign away my future without reading the fine print. "Who is she?" I whispered. "She looks familiar, the way she sat, the tilt of her head." It was uncanny. It was like looking at a distorted mirror. "We will find out," Renee said. She tapped the desk. "Jared, capture that frame. I want the chain of custody log started now. Timestamp it. Hash the file. This image does not leave the secure server until the police request it." She turned to me. "This is no longer an internal dispute. Ms. Parker," she said, "this is bank fraud, conspiracy, and identity theft. We are locking this branch down. I sat back in the chair, my hands gripping the armrests. I felt a strange detachment, a numbness that starts at the fingertips and works its way inward. It was a survival mechanism. If I felt the full weight of this betrayal right now, I would shatter. And I could not shatter. My parents were counting on me shattering. They were banking on it, literally. "I need you to stay in this room," Renee said. "When the officers arrive, they will want to speak to you first. Do not go to the lobby. Do not call anyone." "I am not calling anyone," I said. "I have no one left to call." 10 minutes passed. The silence in the room stretched thin. I watched the second hand on the wall clock tick, tick, tick. Every second was a second closer to noon. But we had beaten the clock. The money was frozen. The wire was dead. Then, there was a knock at the door. It was not a frantic knock. It was authoritative. 3 sharp raps. Deborah, the receptionist, opened the door. She looked pale. Behind her stood 2 uniformed officers. They did not come in with sirens screaming. They did not have guns drawn. Their arrival was quiet, terrifyingly mundane. It was the silent weight of the state entering a private family matter. One officer was a woman, tall with her hair in a tight bun. The other was a man, older, with a notebook already in his hand. "Ms. Talbot," the female officer asked, looking at Renee. "I am Renee Talbot, branch manager. This is the victim, Emery Parker." The word victim hit me hard. I had never been a victim. I was a survivor. I was a fighter. I was a data analyst. But in the eyes of the law, right now, I was a victim. The officers stepped into the room. The space suddenly felt very crowded. "I am Officer Brooks," the woman said. "This is Officer Keene. We received a call regarding an active identity fraud situation." Officer Keene looked at me. He did not smile. He looked at my face, then glanced at the paused image on the screen, seeing the resemblance, seeing the ghost my parents had conjured. I kept my face perfectly still. I crossed my legs. I folded my hands in my lap. I knew exactly what my parents were telling people right now. They were telling the family friends, the pastor, maybe even my boss, that Emery was having a breakdown, that Emery was hysterical, that Emery was manic. If I cried now, I proved them right. If I screamed, I proved them right. I had to be the sanest person in the room. I had to be colder than the bank vault downstairs. "Officers," I said, my voice level and clear. "Thank you for coming. My parents have attempted to liquidate my trust fund using a forged power of attorney and an imposter. I have the evidence on this screen." Officer Brooks blinked. She had likely expected a crying woman. She had likely expected a family domestic dispute with yelling and tears. She did not expect a briefing. She stepped forward, pulling a pen from her tactical vest. "Start from the beginning," she said. But before I could speak, before I could lay out the timeline of the facts and the fake doctor, my phone buzzed against the mahogany desk. It was a single, short vibration, a notification. I glanced down. I should have ignored it. I should have focused on the police. But the screen lit up, and the message was visible. It was an automated alert from the United States Postal Service. "Informed delivery." I read the text preview. "Change of address request confirmation." My heart hammered against my ribs. I tapped the notification, opening the details. "Your mail forwarding request from your current address to 104 Oakwood Lane has been processed. Effective immediately. 104 Oakwood Lane. My parents' house. They were not just taking the money. They were redirecting my entire existence. They were rerouting my bank statements, my legal notices, my bills, everything to their house. They were trying to blind me. They wanted to make sure that when the bank sent the letter saying access denied, it would land in their mailbox, not mine. They wanted to intercept the warnings. I looked up at Officer Brooks. I held up the phone. "They just changed my mailing address," I said. My voice was deadly quiet. "They are doing it right now. While we are sitting here." Jared typed furiously on his keyboard. "I see it," he said. "System update just came through. Address on file changed to the Oakwood Lane residence. Officer Keene stopped writing. He looked at Officer Brooks. "That is mail fraud," Brooks said. "That is federal." Renee crossed her arms. "It seems they are not done," she said. "No," I said. I stood up. The adrenaline clarifying my vision until everything was sharp edges and bright light. "They are not done. They think I am at home crying. They think they have won." I looked at the camera footage again, at the fake Emery signing my life away. "They have no idea I am the one locking the doors," I said. The notification on my phone faded to black, but the damage was done. The war was not just about a bank account anymore. It was about the fundamental right to be me, and they were systematically stripping it away, layer by layer. Officer Brooks looked at me. "Ms. Parker," she said, "we need to take a statement, and then we need to secure this facility." I sat back down. "I am ready," I said. The game had changed. It was no longer a defense. It was a counterattack, and I had the biggest weapon of all, the truth, recorded in high definition, time-stamped, and watched by the law. Officer Maya Brooks did not sit down. She stood at the edge of Jared's desk, her notepad open, her pen hovering over the paper with a practiced readiness. Officer Daniel Keene stood by the door, his posture relaxed but his eyes scanning the room, absorbing the details of the bank office that had become a crime scene. The air conditioner hummed, a low drone that underlined the silence between my statement and their questions. "We need the timeline." "Ms. Parker," Brooks said. Her voice was not unkind, but it was stripped of any social pleasantries. "Keep it chronological. Facts only." I took a breath. The adrenaline that had driven me to the bank was beginning to curdle into a cold, hard knot in my stomach. I looked at the affidavit I had just signed. It felt like a declaration of war. At 8:45 this morning, I attempted to log into my Brightwell Trust and Savings app. I began. My voice was steady, surprising even me. I received an access denied message. I immediately checked my email and found a security alert stating my credentials had been updated. There was no link to dispute the change. Brooks wrote this down, her pen scratching audibly against the paper. "I called my father, Graham Parker, at 8:52. I continued. "I put him on speaker. Both my parents were present. My father admitted that they had taken control of the accounts. He used the phrase family management. My mother, Vanessa Parker, stated that I was unstable and that they were acting to protect me." "Did they mention a legal mechanism?" Keene asked from the door. "Yes," I said. "They claimed they had a power of attorney." I pointed to the screen where the forged document was still displayed. "That document is a forgery." I said, "I did not sign it. The medical letter attached to it claims I am under the care of a doctor, Eris Thorne, for manic psychosis. I have never met this doctor. I have never been diagnosed with a mental illness. And the fax header on the top of that medical letter matches my parents' home landline. Not a medical office." Keene stepped forward to look at the screen. He squinted at the fax header Jared highlighted. "That is bold," Keene muttered. "There is more," I said. I looked at Jared. "Show them the transfer." Jared clicked the mouse. "At 12 noon today, a wire transfer for $465,000 is scheduled to leave my trust account." Jared said, "The destination is an external account. It is a liquidation." I said, "They are draining the principal." Brooks looked up from her notes. "And the woman in the video?" she asked. Jared pulled up the frozen frame of the imposter. "The woman with the sunglasses and the scarf. The woman with the tattoo on her wrist. That is not me." I said, "I have no tattoos. That woman impersonated me yesterday at 14:15 to file the paperwork in person." Keene nodded slowly. He looked at me, then at the screen. The physical difference was subtle to a casual observer, but with the tattoo pointed out, it was glaring. "Okay," Keene said. He closed his notebook for a moment. "We have the fraud. We have the forgery. We have the identity theft. But in domestic financial cases, the biggest hurdle is proving intent versus a misunderstanding. Parents often claim they thought they had permission." He looked me in the eye. "Do you have any text messages?" he asked. "Any emails?" Anything written where they admit to what they are doing. I shook my head. Not yet. They are smart. They keep it verbal. Send one. Keene said. I blinked. Now, right now. Keene said, send a text to your father. Ask him a direct question. Ask him why you are locked out. Do not accuse him of theft. Just ask why. See how he answers. If he answers with an explanation of the plan, he is admitting he knows about the lockout. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. My hands were shaking slightly. I opened the message thread with Graham. The last text was from 3 weeks ago, asking if I was coming for Sunday dinner. It felt like it was from a different lifetime. I typed, why am I locked out of my trust fund? I hit send. The room went silent. We all watched the phone sitting on the mahogany desk. 1 minute passed, then 2. The phone buzzed. Graham. I picked it up. The message was short. It was patronizing. It was exactly him. It read, we have to take action. Do not make this ugly. We are handling it. I handed the phone to Officer Brooks. She read it aloud. Do not make this ugly, she repeated. That is not a denial. That is management. She transcribed the text into her notebook. Jared, who had been quiet, suddenly sat up straighter. He was looking at a secondary monitor, reviewing the transaction history of my account from the previous day. Officers, Jared said, I found something else. We all turned to him. What is it? Renee asked. The wire for $465,000 is scheduled for today, Jared said, but there were 2 outgoing transactions yesterday, after the power of attorney was filed. I frowned. I did not get an alert for those. They were under the notification threshold, Jared said, and they were processed immediately because they were internal transfers. He turned the screen. Yesterday at 16:30 hours, a transfer of $4,000. Then, at 16:45 hours, a transfer of $9,500. Keene whistled low. Structuring. He said, what does that mean? I asked. Structuring is when you intentionally keep transactions under $10,000 to avoid triggering a federal currency transaction report. Jared explained, if you move $10,000 or more, the bank has to file a report with the government. By doing $9,500, they stayed just under the radar. It shows consciousness of guilt, Keene said. Honest people do not structure payments to avoid federal reporting. Only people who know they are doing something wrong do that. Where did the money go? I asked. Jared clicked on the destination account. It went to a new checking account opened yesterday at this branch. Jared said, he highlighted the account name, Parker Household Stabilization Fund. I stared at the name, Parker Household Stabilization. It sounded like a charity. It sounded like a relief effort. It was a title designed to make their theft look like a humanitarian mission. They were stabilizing the household. They were saving the family. And I was the disaster they were stabilizing. Who is the owner of that account? Brooks asked. Primary owner Graham Parker. Jared read. Authorized signer Vanessa Parker. So they opened a bucket to catch the money. Keene summarized. They tested the pipe with small amounts to make sure it worked. And today at noon, they were going to turn on the fire hose and drain the remaining $465,000. This was not an impulsive decision made because they were worried about me. This was an engineered financial extraction. They had built the infrastructure. They had tested the lines. My phone buzzed again. I looked down. This time, the name on the screen was Mom. I felt a spike of nausea. Vanessa never texted unless she wanted something. I opened the message. It was a block of text, long, rambling, and terrifying. I read it silently first, the words burning into my retinas. Emery, your father says you are asking questions. Stop it. If you try to fight this or involve outsiders, we will have no choice. We have the paperwork ready to file for emergency guardianship. Doctor, Thorne agrees you are a danger to your own future. Do not force us to make your medical history public. We just want to help. I felt the blood drain from my face. My hands went cold. This was not management. This was blackmail. I held the phone out to Officer Brooks. My hand was trembling. Read this, I whispered. Brooks took the phone. She read the message. Her expression did not change, but her posture stiffened. She read it again, slower this time. She looked up at Keen. Daniel, look at this. Keen stepped over and read the screen over her shoulder. His jaw tightened. She is threatening to file for guardianship if you report the theft. Keen said, she is threatening to label me insane. I said, she is saying that if I try to get my money back, she will tell a judge I am psychotic and lock me away legally. Officer Brooks placed the phone gently back on the desk. She looked at me with a new intensity. The distance of the professional interview was gone. In its place was the sharp, dangerous focus of a cop who has just realized the crime is worse than she thought. Ms. Parker, Brooks said, up until this text message, we were looking at fraud. We were looking at larceny. Those are property crimes. She tapped the phone with her index finger. But this is extortion. This is using the threat of a legal process and reputational damage to coerce you into allowing them to steal your assets. She turned to Keen. This is no longer just a financial investigation, she said. This is coercion. This is a person being held hostage by their own family using the legal system as a weapon. Keen nodded. I am updating the report, he said. We need to document that text verbatim. Screenshot it. Email it to the evidence locker immediately. Renee, the branch manager, spoke up from the corner. Does this change how we handle the funds, she asked. It changes everything, Brooks said. She looked at me. Ms. Parker, your parents are not just trying to steal your money. They are building a trap. If you had not come in here today, if you had not frozen that account, they would have drained the money and then filed for guardianship anyway to keep you from suing them. They would have used your lack of funds as proof that you could not take care of yourself. The realization hit me like a physical blow. That was the plan. It was a perfect circle. Steal the money to make me destitute. Use the destitution to prove I was incompetent. Get guardianship to cover the theft. They were going to erase me, completely. I looked at the phone. The message from my mother sat there, glowing on the screen. It was meant to silence me. It was meant to send me back to bed, terrified and compliant. Instead, it was the final nail in their coffin. Officer Brooks looked at me. We have enough, she said. We have the video. We have the structuring. We have the fake notary. And now, we have the threat. She turned to Jared. Is the account fully locked, she asked. Jared nodded. Fraud hold level 4. Nothing moves. Good, Brooks said, because we are going to need those records for the district attorney. She turned back to me. Ms. Parker, I need to ask you a difficult question. Do you feel safe going home? I thought about my apartment. I thought about the spare key my parents had. I thought about the text message. No. I said, I do not. Then we need to get you a temporary protective order. Brooks said, and we need to get it now. My phone buzzed a third time. I looked down. It was an email notification. From the bank. New trusted contact added. I looked at Jared. They are trying to add a contact. I said. Jared looked at his screen. They are trying to add themselves as the primary contact for password resets. He said, they are trying to cut you off from the recovery process. Let them try, Renee said, her voice like ice. They are pushing buttons on a dashboard that is already disconnected. Every click they make is just another line of evidence in the audit log. I looked at the officers. I looked at the bankers. I was surrounded by strangers who were fighting for me harder than my own blood. Let's finish the statement, I said. I want every word recorded. I want them to know that when they threatened to burn my life down, I was the one holding the match. Officer Keen flipped to a fresh page in his notebook. Go ahead. Ms. Parker, he said. I began to speak, and this time, my voice did not shake. I told them everything. And as I spoke, I watched the red access denied banner on the screen, knowing that soon, the only people who would be denied access were Graham and Vanessa Parker. The static of the police radio on Officer Brooks' shoulder burst into the silence of the office, shattering the momentary calm we had achieved. It was a sharp, mechanical sound, followed by the dispatcher's voice, tinny and distorted but loud enough for everyone in the room to hear. Dispatch to Unit 4 Alpha. We have a priority call for a welfare check. Caller identifies as parents of the subject. They state the subject is currently experiencing a manic episode, is delusional, and is at high risk of financial exploitation by strangers. Address provided is. The dispatcher read out my address, my apartment, the place where I slept, the place where I thought I was safe. Officer Brooks reached up and keyed her radio. 4 Alpha copy. We are currently with the subject at the downtown branch of Brightwell Trust. Subject is secure and lucid. Disregard the welfare check. We are treating this as a false report filed to harass. She lowered her hand and looked at me. Her expression was grim. They are trying to SWAT you, she said, not with a SWAT team, but with a psychiatric intervention. They want a patrol car to show up at your house, find you agitated, and drag you to a hospital for a 72-hour hold. I felt a cold sweat break out on the back of my neck. I understood the game immediately. It was not about checking on my safety. It was about generating a police report number. If they could get a police report saying officers were dispatched for a welfare check because of mental instability, they could attach that report to their guardianship petition. It did not matter if the police found nothing. The existence of the call itself was the evidence they needed to paint a picture of a family in crisis. It is a paper trail, I said, my voice sounding hollow in the small room. They are manufacturing a history of instability. They want a judge to look at the timeline and see a pattern of concern. Officer Keene nodded. It is called establishing a baseline, he said. They call today, they call tomorrow. By Friday, they have 3 logged calls regarding your mental health. To a family court judge who does not know you, it looks like a spiraling crisis. I looked at Renee. Can they access the account, I asked. Can they use this police call to override the freeze? Absolutely not, Renee said. She turned to her computer, but we are going to double lock the doors. She typed a series of commands, her fingers moving with aggressive speed. I am placing a verbal password on the account, she said. This is an old school protocol, but it is effective. Even if someone comes in with a court order, even if someone comes in with your ID, they cannot access information or authorize transactions without this word. It overrides biometric data. It overrides signatures. She looked at me. Pick a word, she said. Something that cannot be guessed. Not a pet's name, not a street name, something random. I thought about it. I needed a word that my parents would never associate with me. A word that belonged to a part of my life they did not know existed. Tarmac, I said. Tarmac, Renee asked. Yes, I said. Like the airport runway. Tarmac. Renee typed it in. Done, she said. Unless the person says tarmac, the screen stays black. I stood up. The police officers had my statement. The bank had the fraud hold, but I was still on the defensive. I was reacting to their moves. I needed to start making moves of my own. I need a lawyer, I said. A real one, not a family friend, not someone my father plays golf with. Officer Brooks ripped a page from her notebook and handed it to me. We cannot recommend counsel, she said. But in cases of elder abuse and financial exploitation, the firm of Holloway and Crane is who we usually see on the other side of the courtroom. They are vicious. I took the paper. Holloway and Crane. I need to make a call, I said. I stepped out of the office into the hallway. Leaving the door slightly ajar so the officers could still see me, I dialed the number for Holloway and Crane. It rang twice. Holloway and Crane. Legal intake. My name is Emery Parker. I said, my parents have forged a power of attorney to liquidate my trust fund. They are currently attempting to file for guardianship to cover the theft. I have police and bank security securing the evidence right now. I need representation immediately. There was a brief pause. The intake specialist likely heard the tremor of adrenaline in my voice, but also the precision of my facts. Hold for Mr. Crane, she said. 30 seconds later, a deep, gravelly voice came on the line. This is Elias Crane. You have 60 seconds to convince me this is not a domestic squabble. It took me 45 seconds. I told him about the fax header, the fake doctor, the structuring of the transfers, the welfare check that just came through dispatch. When I finished, there was a silence on the other end. Stop talking, Crane said. I am taking the case. Here is what you are going to do. I grabbed a pen from my purse and leaned against the wall. Writing on the back of the police note. First, Crane said, his voice sharp and commanding, you are going to instruct the bank to preserve all surveillance footage, not just the clips they found. I want the parking lot feeds. I want the exterior cameras. I want to know what car that imposter got into. Second, he continued, we are hiring a forensic document examiner. I do not care what the bank says. I want an independent expert to certify that signature is a forgery. We need a sworn affidavit from an expert witness before your parents even file their petition. Third, and this is the most important part, Crane said, you need an alibi, not a vague one. I need undeniable, digital proof of your location at 14:15 yesterday. Where were you? I was at work. I said, Cedarline Data Systems. Does your building have secure entry? Crane asked. Yes, I said. We have badge readers at the lobby turnstiles, the elevators, and the suite doors. Get the logs, Crane ordered. Do not ask for them nicely. Demand them. If you were swiping into a secure server room at 2:15, you could not have been signing a document at a bank 20 miles away. Physics is our best defense. I hung up the phone with a plan. I walked back into the office. I need to call my company. I said to Renee, I need my badge access logs. I dialed the internal number for Cedarline's security office. I knew the head of security, a man named Marcus. We had worked together on a data compliance project last year. Security. Marcus speaking. Marcus, it is Emery Parker. I said, I have an emergency. I need a raw export of my badge activity for the last 48 hours. I need it emailed to my personal address immediately. It is a legal matter. There was a hesitation on the line. It was not the hesitation of a busy man. It was the hesitation of a man who knows something he does not want to say. Emery, Marcus said slowly. I was just about to call you. Why, I asked. A knot of dread tightened in my stomach. We had a call, Marcus said. About 20 minutes ago. It came through the anonymous ethics hotline, but the caller ID was blocked. What did they say? I asked, though I already knew. The caller stated that you were suffering from a mental health crisis and that you might be leveraging your access to sensitive client data to embezzle funds. Marcus said they used the word unstable multiple times. They said they were a concerned family member trying to protect the company from liability. I closed my eyes. They had opened a second front. They were not just coming for the trust fund. They were coming for my salary. They were scorching the earth. If I lost my job, I would lose my health insurance. I would lose the income I needed to pay for a lawyer. I would be financially crippled, making me the perfect candidate for guardianship. Marcus, I said, my voice shaking with fury. That call was from my parents. I am currently sitting in the office of Brightwell Trust with 2 police officers. My parents just attempted to steal $465,000 from me. They are trying to get me fired so I cannot fight them in court. There was a stunned silence on the other end. I have a police case number. I said, I have a fraud report. I am sending you all of it. I want you to flag that hotline call as malicious harassment. Okay, Marcus said, his voice shifting from suspicious to protective. Send me the case number. I will pull your logs myself. Nobody is touching your employment status without going through legal. I will lock your account access temporarily just to cover our bases, but I will not terminate you. Thank you. Marcus. I said. I hung up. I felt like I had run a marathon. Every time I blocked a punch, they threw another one from a different angle. They were relentless. I looked at Officer Brooks. They called my job. I said, they told security I was embezzling. Brooks shook her head in disgust. They are trying to isolate you, she said. It is classic abuser behavior. Cut off the money, cut off the support system, cut off the job. Make the victim entirely dependent on the abuser for survival. She closed her notebook with a snap. We are done here, she said. You have the fraud hold. You have the lawyer. You have the police report. Now you need to go home and secure your personal property. Do you have a safe place to stay tonight? I can stay at a hotel. I said, but I need to go to my apartment first. I need clothes. I need my laptop. We will escort you. Officer Keene said, we will follow you to your residence. We will wait while you pack. And if your parents show up, they will be having a very long conversation with us." The drive to my apartment was a blur. I drove mechanically, checking my rearview mirror every few seconds to make sure the patrol car was still behind me. The city looked the same as it had this morning. But I felt like an alien walking through a simulation. When I pulled into my building's garage, the police car idled at the curb. I waved to them, signaling I would be quick. I took the elevator up to the 4th floor. My heart was pounding. I half expected to find Graham and Vanessa sitting on my sofa, sipping tea, waiting to tell me it was all for my own good. I walked down the hallway to apartment 402. The hallway was empty. The carpet was vacuumed. It was quiet. I reached for my keys, but then I stopped. There was something on the floor, lying on the welcome mat, just halfway tucked under the door. Was a large manila envelope. It was thick. It was ominous. I stared at it. It had not been mailed. There was no postage. Someone had walked into my building, taken the elevator up, and slid this under my door by hand. I unlocked the door and pushed it open, kicking the envelope inside with my foot before slamming the door and locking the deadbolt. I checked the apartment. Empty. Secure. I picked up the envelope. My hands were trembling so hard I could barely open the metal clasp. I pulled out the stack of papers. It was a legal petition. Petition for appointment of emergency temporary guardian of the property and person. The petitioner, Graham Parker and Vanessa Parker. The respondent, Emery A. Parker. I flipped through the pages. It was a draft. It was not stamped by the court yet. It was a threat. Attached to the back were exhibits. Exhibit A was the fake doctor's letter. Exhibit B was a printout of my bank account balance, showing the freeze. Exhibit C was a printout of the anonymous ethics complaint to my company, typed up as if it were a sworn statement. They had printed out their own lies and attached them as evidence. But it was the sticky note on the front page that made my blood run cold. It was written in my mother's elegant, cursive script, the same handwriting she used for thank you notes and birthday cards. It read, "Emery, darling, we do not want to file this. It will become a public record. It will ruin your reputation forever. Everyone will know you are sick. Unlock the account. Sign the real power of attorney. If you do, we burn this. If you don't, we file it tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Love, Mom." I stared at the note. Love, Mom. She was offering me a choice. I could be robbed, or I could be destroyed. I could give them the money and keep my freedom, or I could fight them and have my name dragged through the mud of the public court system, labeled as a mental patient for the rest of my life. I looked around my apartment. I looked at the photos of my friends on the fridge. I looked at my diploma on the wall. They wanted to take all of this away. I walked over to the shredder in the corner of my home office. For a second, I thought about shredding it. I thought about pretending I never saw it, but then I remembered the lawyer's voice, Holloway and Crane. I do not care what the bank says. I want the evidence. This envelope was not a threat. It was a confession. It was proof of premeditation. It was proof of blackmail. I did not shred it. I took my phone out and photographed every single page. I photographed the sticky note. I photographed the envelope. Then I put the papers back in the envelope and shoved it into my bag alongside my laptop and my passport. I walked to the door. I was not going to hide. I was not going to negotiate. They said they would file at 9 o'clock tomorrow. Good. I would be there at 8:30, and I would not be alone. I opened the door and walked out, leaving the empty apartment behind. The time for being a daughter was over. The time for being a defendant was over. I was the plaintiff now. I sat in the stiff armchair of the hotel room Officer Brooks had secured for me. The blackout curtains were drawn, but the glow of my laptop screen illuminated the small space like an interrogation lamp. On the screen was the image Renee had exported from the bank security feed. It was the wrist of the imposter, magnified, until the pixels blurred into abstract blocks of color. Officer Brooks had sent me a secure message 10 minutes ago. "We need a name. Emery, the biometric mismatch is our strongest evidence, but we need to identify the person attached to that wrist." I stared at the black ink on the woman's skin. In the bank office, I had only seen a shape. Now, staring at the high-resolution still. I saw the details. It was a geometric design, a stylized sun with sharp, triangular rays, sitting just above the ulna bone. My stomach twisted into a knot that felt like physical sickness. I knew that tattoo. I had paid for half of it. 2 years ago. For her 25th birthday. My sister Sloane had decided she wanted to be rebellious in the safest, most suburban way possible. She wanted a matching tattoo with her best friend since college, a girl named Chloe. They had gone to a boutique parlor in the city. Sloane got a geometric moon on her left wrist. Chloe got the geometric sun on her right. I looked at the screen again. The woman in the video was using her right hand to sign the document. The tattoo was a sun. It was not Sloane, but it was someone who lived in Sloane's orbit. It was someone who sat at our dinner table during Thanksgiving. It was someone who knew my face, knew my mannerisms, and apparently knew the price of her own integrity. My phone rang. The screen lit up with a photo I had taken years ago, Sloane making a silly face over a margarita. I stared at it. I did not want to answer. If I answered, I would have to accuse her. If I answered, I would have to hear her lie. But I needed the truth. I swiped the green button and put the phone to my ear. I did not say hello. I did not say her name. I just listened. Emery. Her voice was unrecognizable. Gone was the snide, superior tone she had used on the conference call this morning. Gone was the little sister who thought she was the favorite. She sounded small. She sounded terrified. I know who she is. Sloane, I said. My voice was flat, devoid of the anger I felt boiling underneath. I am looking at a security photo of a right wrist with a geometric sun tattoo. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. It was Chloe. Wasn't it? I asked. Sloane let out a sound that was half sob, half gasp. I did not know. She stammered. I swear on my life, I did not know she was going to the bank. You were on the phone with Mom and Dad this morning. I said, you laughed when they told me I was unstable. You said Dad was protecting me. You were part of the script. I thought they were just freezing the account, Sloane cried. Her voice cracked. Mom told me you were having a breakdown. She said you were spending money like crazy and we had to stop you before you hurt yourself. I believed her. I thought I was helping. And the part where Chloe puts on a wig and pretends to be me, I asked, did you think that was helping too? I did not know about that. Sloane insisted. But what? But last week, Dad asked to borrow my laptop, she whispered. He said their printer was jammed and he needed to print some insurance forms. He had Chloe come over to help him organize the files because she is good with administrative stuff. They were in the study for 3 hours with the door closed. I closed my eyes. The pieces were clicking together with the precision of a bear trap. I typed on my laptop as she spoke, opening the email Renee had sent me earlier, containing the metadata report from the bank's compliance team. I had not looked closely at the technical details yet, focusing only on the fraud itself. Now, I scrolled down to the section labeled Originating Device. There it was, PDF author Graham Parker. Device ID, Sloane, MacBook Pro. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the hotel air conditioning. Sloane, I said, do you realize what they have done? What she asked? They created the forged power of attorney on your computer. I said, the digital fingerprint on the document that stole my identity leads directly to your serial number. Silence stretched across the line. Heavy and suffocating. If this goes down, I continued, my voice merciless. They are not going to jail. They are going to say you did it. They are going to say you and your best friend Chloe conspired to rob me, and they were just the unsuspecting parents who signed what you put in front of them. No, Sloane whispered. Mom wouldn't. Mom would. I said, Mom is threatening to have me committed to a mental institution tomorrow morning to save her reputation. Do you think she will hesitate to throw you under the bus to save herself from federal prison? Sloane began to cry in earnest now. It was the sound of a worldview shattering. She had spent her whole life believing she was the golden child, the one who followed the rules and got the rewards. Now she was realizing she was just another asset to be leveraged. Emery, please, she sobbed. I am scared. Mom texted me 10 minutes ago. What did she say? She told me to wipe my laptop. Sloan said. She said I should run a factory reset just to clean out old files. She said it would help the computer run faster. Do not touch that computer. I commanded. Do not delete a single file. Do not turn it off. If you wipe that drive, you are destroying evidence, and you will go to prison for obstruction of justice. I won't, Sloan stammered. I need you to listen to me very carefully. I said, the police are already involved. The bank has alerted the district attorney. This train has left the station, and it is going to crash into our family whether you like it or not. The only choice you have left is whether you are on the tracks or driving the engine with me. What do I do? She asked. I need evidence. I said, I need the texts where Mom told you to wipe the laptop. I need any messages between you and Chloe. And I need you to go on the record stating that you gave Dad access to your machine. I can't go to the police station, Sloan said. If Dad finds out, not the police station. I said, not yet. Meet me. Tonight. Where there is a diner on 4th and Main. The one open 24 hours. I said, meet me there in 45 minutes. Bring your phone. Bring the laptop. And Sloan, yes. If you tell them you are meeting me, if you give them even a hint of a warning, I will let the police prosecute you as a co-conspirator. I won't tell them. She promised. I swear. I hung up the phone. My hand was shaking, but not from fear. It was shaking from the sheer toxicity of the truth. My parents had weaponized their children against each other. They had used Sloane's trust to destroy my life, and they had set her up to take the fall if the plan failed. I looked back at the computer screen. I had a new email from Jared at the bank. The subject line was simply, update on notary and staff. I opened it. The text was dense with corporate speak, but the meaning was clear. Ms. Parker, our internal investigation has flagged 2 significant anomalies regarding the processing of the power of attorney. First, the notary public who stamped the document, a Mr. Arthur Vane, has been identified as a high-risk vendor. We ran a cross-check with state licensing boards. Mr. Vane has 3 prior complaints for negligent notarization, where he failed to verify signer identity in eldercare cases. He is currently under review by the State Commission. Second, and more concerning, the bank associate who processed the intake of the document yesterday, Mr. Jason Miller, did not report for his shift today. He sent an email at 6 a.m. resigning effective immediately. Citing personal family emergency, we are preserving his workstation and email archives for the police. I leaned back in the chair. The picture was complete. They had a dirty notary. They had a compromised bank employee who likely took a payoff to look the other way when Emery kept her sunglasses on. They had a fake doctor. And they had my sister's laptop and my sister's best friend. It was a conspiracy. It was a racketeering operation disguised as a family intervention. I grabbed my coat and my bag. I had to get to the diner. I had to get to Sloan before my parents realized she was defecting. If they sensed she was wavering, they would isolate her just like they tried to isolate me. I checked the time. It was 9:30 at night. The city outside was dark, but for the first time all day, I could see the path forward. I sent a text to Officer Brooks. I have identified the imposter. It is an associate of my sister. My sister is cooperating. I am meeting her to secure digital evidence. I did not wait for a reply. I walked out of the hotel room, the key card heavy in my pocket. I was walking into the night to meet the only family member I might have left, hoping that blood was still thicker than the ink on a check. But in the Parker family, that was no longer a guarantee. I drove to the diner, parking in the shadows at the back of the lot. I watched the entrance for 5 minutes, checking for my father's Range Rover or my mother's Mercedes. The lot was empty except for a few trucks and a delivery van. I walked inside. The diner smelled of coffee and grease. It was quiet. The late-night rush not yet started. I saw her in the back booth. Sloan looked terrible. She was wearing a hoodie pulled up over her head, her face scrubbed clean of makeup, her eyes red and puffy. She had her laptop bag clutched to her chest like a shield. I slid into the booth opposite her. She looked up, and I saw the fear in her eyes. It was the fear of a child who realizes the monsters under the bed are actually the people sleeping down the hall. "You brought it?" I asked. She nodded. She pulled the silver laptop out of the bag and placed it on the table. "And the texts?" I asked. She unlocked her phone and slid it across the table to me. "Read the thread with Mom," she whispered. I scrolled up. "Sloan, Mom. Emery is freaking out. She says the bank is investigating. Mom, ignore her. She is manic. We have it under control. Sloan. She says there is a police report. Mom, there is no report. She is lying. Just stay home. Sloan. Mom. Did you use my computer for the bank forms? Mom. Sloan. Stop asking questions. Do not talk to anyone. And run a cleaner on your laptop tonight. It's cluttered. Do it now." I looked up at Sloan. "She told you to destroy evidence." I said, "That text message alone is obstruction of justice." Sloan wiped her nose with her sleeve. "There is more," she said. "Look at the messages with Chloe." I opened the thread with Chloe. Sloan. Chloe. "Where are you, Chloe? I can't talk." Sloan. Emery says someone pretended to be her at the bank. She says they had a sun tattoo. Chloe. Sloan. Chloe. Was it you? Did my dad ask you to do it, Chloe? He said it was just a formality. He said Emery was sick and refused to sign the papers to pay for her treatment. He said they needed someone to stand in so they could access the funds to get her help. He gave me $5,000 for my tuition. Sloan. I didn't know it was a crime. I lowered the phone. $5,000. My identity was sold for the price of a community college semester. They lied to her too. Sloan said softly, "They told her you were refusing treatment, and they needed the money to save your life. It was the perfect lie. It made Graham and Vanessa look like desperate, loving parents breaking the rules to save their child, and it made Chloe feel like a hero for helping them. They manipulated everyone." I looked at my sister. For years, I had resented her. I thought she was their spy. I thought she was their clone, but she was just another pawn. I slid the phone back to her. "We need to go." I said. "Go where?" "To the police station," I said. Sloan shook her head, panic rising again. I can't turn them in." "You are not turning them in," I said, reaching across the table to grab her hand. My grip was hard. I was not coddling her. I was saving her. "You are saving yourself, because if you don't walk into that station with me right now and hand over that phone, when the police knock on your door tomorrow and you will be a suspect. Tonight, you are a witness. Tomorrow, you are an accomplice. Choose." Sloan looked at me. She looked at the laptop. She looked at the door. Then, slowly, she nodded. "Okay," she whispered. I stood up. I put cash on the table for the coffee neither of us had ordered. "Let's go," I said. We walked out into the cool night air. The wind had picked up, cutting through my coat, but I didn't feel the cold. I felt the heat of the fire that was about to burn my parents' house of cards to the ground. They had bet on family loyalty. They had bet on silence. They had bet wrong. The digital clock on the wall of the precinct interrogation room read 3 o'clock in the morning. The air was stale, smelling of cold coffee and industrial cleaner, but my mind was sharper than it had been at noon. I sat next to Sloan, who was dozing intermittently with her head on her folded arms. My phone, plugged into a wall charger, was my lifeline to the war being waged on my behalf while the city slept. My lawyer, Elias Crane, was not sleeping. He had proven to be exactly the kind of shark officer Brooks had promised. My inbox pinged with a copy of a document he had just served electronically to the legal department of Brightwell Trust and Savings. As well as the police commissioner's office, it was a preservation of evidence demand. It was terrifyingly comprehensive. Crane was not just asking them to save the video of my parents. He was demanding the preservation of every digital footprint associated with the Parker family accounts for the last 5 years. He demanded server logs, internal chat transcripts between bank employees, badge access records for the teller line, and the metadata for every document uploaded to the trust portal. He was locking the doors and trapping the ghosts inside. 10 minutes later, a new email arrived. This one was not from Crane. It was from Kendra Shaw, the head of trust compliance at Brightwell. Renee had looped her in after the fraud hold escalated to level 4. Kendra was the person who looked at the architecture of the crime, not just the crime itself. The subject line read, "Pattern Analysis and Internal Protocol Breach." I opened the attachment. It was a forensic report, dense with banking jargon, but the conclusion was highlighted in yellow. Kendra had run the text of the power of attorney document through a national fraud database. Usually, these documents are standard legal templates downloaded from state websites, but this one had specific phrasing in the liability clause. It contained a grammatical error in the third paragraph, a misplaced comma that changed the meaning of the fiduciary duty. That error was a fingerprint. Kendra found that this exact template, with the exact same error, had been flagged in a fraud alert bulletin 6 months ago. It originated from a forum on the dark web dedicated to elder financial abuse strategies. My parents, or whoever was advising them, had not gone to a lawyer to draft this. They had downloaded a kit designed for stealing assets from incapacitated relatives. But the report went deeper. Kendra had cross-referenced the language in the fake doctor's letter with the account opening documents for the Parker household stabilization account. I read the findings aloud, my voice low so I did not wake Sloan. The account purpose code was listed as family maintenance, but in the notes field. The banker who opened it had typed a specific justification, temporary control while beneficiary is impaired. I switched tabs to the fake doctor's letter. The second sentence read, "This letter is to certify that Ms. Parker is currently impaired regarding her financial capacity." The word impaired. It was not a standard medical term for a manic episode. A doctor would say incapacitated or acute distress. Impaired was a specific legal trigger word used in trust documents to bypass beneficiary approval. They were using the same script across different platforms. The doctor, the bank account notes, and the power of attorney were all singing from the same hymn sheet. This proved it was not an emotional reaction to a crisis. It was a coordinated narrative. I looked at the bottom of Kendra's report. There was a section titled, "Employee Conduct Review." This was the smoking gun. Renee and Kendra had pulled the audit logs for the employee who processed the power of attorney. The man who had resigned this morning, Jason Miller, in a standard in-person verification. The system forces the employee to go through a checklist, check ID, verify likeness, ask challenge question. The logs showed that Jason Miller had clicked override on the challenge question step. He had selected a drop-down menu option labeled "Client unable to verbalize due to medical condition." I felt a surge of cold fury. I was not unable to verbalize. I was sitting at my desk 20 miles away, analyzing data. But Miller had used that button to silence the imposter so she would not have to speak and risk her voice being recognized as not mine. But why? Why would a bank employee risk his career for my parents? The answer came in the next attachment. Renee had done what Crane asked. She had gone back to the video footage, but she did not look at the faces this time. She looked at the hands. The video file was titled, "Lobby Camera 4 Angle B." I clicked play. The footage was grainy, taken from a camera positioned high in the corner behind the teller line. It showed the back of Jason Miller's head and the front of the counter where my parents stood. I watched Graham standing tall, radiating authority. I watched the fake Emery slumped in the chair, and I watched Vanessa. My mother was holding her handbag on the counter. It was her black Hermes bag, the one she only used for board meetings. In the video, she reached into the bag. She did not pull out a tissue. She did not pull out a wallet. She pulled out a white envelope. It was thin, standard business size. Jason Miller was typing on his keyboard. He looked up. Vanessa slid the envelope across the marble counter. It was a smooth, practiced motion. She did not hand it to him openly. She slid it under the stack of insurance papers Graham was holding. Miller reached out. He took the papers, and with them, the envelope. He did not open it. He did not ask what it was. He slid the envelope directly into the open drawer of his station. Then, he looked back at the screen and continued typing. 3 seconds later, the timestamp on the log showed he hit the override button. I sat back, the air leaving my lungs. It was a bribe. My mother, The woman who chaired the charity gala for the local library, the woman who scolded me for not writing thank you notes, had walked into a federally insured bank and bribed an employee to steal my identity. This changed the complexion of the entire case. This was not just fraud. This was corruption. This was a conspiracy involving an internal bad actor. I nudged Sloane. She jumped, her eyes flying open. "Wake up," I said. "You need to see this." Sloane rubbed her face, looking at the screen. She watched the video of the envelope slide across the counter. "Is that money?" she asked, her voice raspy. "I doubt it was a thank you card," I said. Sloane stared at the screen, her face pale. "I have something too," she whispered. She unlocked her phone. I was looking through the archive folder. She said, "The one Mom told me to delete. I found a screenshot she sent to Dad last week. It was from a text thread I didn't recognize." She handed me the phone. The screenshot was of a conversation between Vanessa and an unsaved number. The message from Vanessa read, "The arrangement is $5,000 cash upon completion. No digital trail. Just ensure the override happens." The reply read, "Understood. Tuesday afternoon, 2:15, Tuesday, 2:15. The exact time they walked into the bank. "They bought him," I said. "They bought the time slot. They bought the override." Sloane scrolled to another image. "And look at this," she said. "This is the text Mom sent me yesterday morning, right before I called you." I read the message. "Vanessa. Keep her distracted if she calls. We just need to get past noon tomorrow. Once the clock hits 12, the transfer clears, and we have the resources to handle the legal side." The resources to handle the legal side. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. They knew I would fight. They knew I would hire a lawyer. They were stealing the $465,000 not just to have the money, but to fund the war against me. They were going to use my own money to pay for the lawyers who would argue that I was incompetent. They were going to use my trust fund to pay for the expert witnesses who would testify that I was insane. They were stripping me of my war chest so they could use it to bury me. If I had waited until tomorrow afternoon, if I had listened to them and stayed in bed, the money would be gone. I would be trying to hire a lawyer with $0 in my account, while they sat on a $500,000 defense fund that belonged to me. It was diabolical. It was brilliant. And it was falling apart because I had walked into the bank at 9 a.m. instead of noon. I picked up my phone and dialed Crane. It was 3:30 in the morning. He answered on the first ring. "We have the smoking gun," I said. "I have video of a bribe. I have a text confirming the payoff amount. And I have confirmation that the goal was to liquidate the funds to pay for their legal offensive against me." Crane did not sound tired. He sounded energized. "Excellent," he said. "That connects the conspiracy. It proves the bank employee was an active participant, not a victim of deception. That makes the bank liable if they don't cooperate fully." He paused. The sound of papers shuffling in the background. "But we have a problem." "Emery," Crane said. "What I asked. Your parents know the wire didn't go through." He said, "They likely got the notification at midnight when the system processed the daily batch. They know the account is frozen, so what will they do?" "They are cornered animals," Crane said. "They have two choices. They can run, or they can attack. Given their personality profile, they will attack. They are going to file that emergency guardianship petition the second the courthouse opens at 8:30, but we have evidence it is fake," I argued. "The court clerk doesn't know that," Crane explained. "An emergency petition is ex parte. That means they go in front of a judge without you there. They show the doctor's letter. They show the police report from the welfare check. They cry and say their daughter is in danger. The judge grants a temporary order for 72 hours until a hearing can be set. And if they get that order," I asked. "If they get that order," Crane said, his voice grave, "they become your legal guardians for 3 days. They can legally walk into the police station and dismiss the complaint you filed. They can legally fire me. They can legally commit you to a facility for observation." I felt the walls of the interrogation room closing in. "So how do we stop them?" I asked. "We have to beat them to the punch." Crane said, "I am drafting a petition for a civil protection order. We are going to file it under the domestic violence statute, citing financial abuse, extortion, and harassment. Will that stop the guardianship? It creates a conflict, Crane said. If there is an active protection order, or even a pending one, the family court judge has to pause the guardianship request. It forces a hearing. It forces them to look at the evidence before they hand over the keys to your life. But we have to file first. I said, yes, Crane said. I have a courier waiting at the courthouse steps right now. But I need one more thing from you. Would I need you to verify the source of the fake doctor's letter definitively? Crane said, the fax header is good. But if we can prove the doctor himself is unaware, it destroys their credibility instantly. Renee is on that. I said, she was calling the clinic. Check with her. Crane ordered, I need that affidavit. If we can walk into court and say, here is an affidavit from the real doctor, Thorne stating he has never met Emery Parker. The judge will throw their petition in the shredder. I hung up and texted Renee. Did you reach Dr. Thorne? The reply came 2 minutes later. Yes. I woke him up. He is furious. He says he has been on a sabbatical in Europe for 3 months. He hasn't seen a patient in 90 days. He is emailing a sworn statement now. He wants to press charges for identity theft too. I forwarded the text to Crane. It was over. Or at least, the deception was over. Now it was just a foot race. I looked at Sloane. We have to go to the courthouse, I said. Now, she asked. We have to be there when the doors open. I said, I want them to see me. I want them to see us. I want them to know that their impaired daughter is standing on the steps of justice, wide awake and ready to burn them down. Sloane nodded, pulling her hood up. I'm ready, she said. We walked out of the precinct. The sky was beginning to turn a dark, bruised purple in the east. Dawn was coming. The deadline of 12 noon was no longer the threat. The new deadline was 8:30 a.m., and for the first time in 24 hours. I felt like the hunter instead of the prey. They had the fake papers. They had the bribes. They had the lies. But I had the truth. I had the timestamps. And I had the one thing they never expected me to have. I had the will to destroy the family name to save myself. The sun had barely risen over the city skyline, casting a gray, washed-out light through the windows of the 24-hour diner where Sloane and I were still sitting. The coffee in my cup was cold, a black mirror reflecting my exhaustion, but my mind was vibrating with a hyper-alertness that felt chemical. We were in the eye of the storm, the frenetic activity of the night the police interview, the chase for the laptop, the revelation of the bribe had settled into a tense, vibrating silence. Then, at 6:15 in the morning, my phone chimed. It was an email. The sender was Graham Parker. I opened it, my thumb hovering over the screen. The subject line was typically vague. Regarding our misunderstanding, I read the body text aloud to Sloane. Emery, we are willing to pause the restructuring of the trust if you agree to come home and discuss this civilly. We understand you are confused. If you withdraw your complaint with the bank and the authorities, we are prepared to authorize a release of $50,000 to your personal account immediately for your living expenses. The rest will remain under family management until you are well. This is a one-time offer. Do not let lawyers destroy this family. Dad, I let out a short, dry laugh. It was a masterclass in manipulation. He was offering me $50,000 of my own $480,000 fund. He was trying to buy my silence with 10% of my own money, while still framing me as the one who was confused and unwell. It was not a settlement. It was a bribe. And more importantly, it was a confession. You do not offer to release $50,000 if you truly believe the beneficiary is mentally incompetent. You only offer cash if you are terrified. I forwarded the email to Elias Crane immediately. 2 minutes later, Crane called. Do not reply. Crane commanded. His voice was gravelly with sleep, but sharp with intent. Do not type a single word. If you reply, you open a negotiation. We are not negotiating. We are prosecuting. He is scared. I said, he knows the wire did not clear. He is testing the fence. Crane said, he wants to see if you are desperate for cash. By offering $50,000, He is trying to see if your price is low. It is an insult, but it is also evidence. I will add this email to the exhibit list under attempted witness tampering." Crane paused, and I heard the sound of a keyboard clacking in the background. "I have news," Crane said. "While you were securing your sister, I had my paralegal digging through the original trust deed from your grandmother, the document that established the fund in 1998. I found something your father hoped you would never find." Crane continued. "What I asked. The trust has a dormant clause for a trust protector," Crane said. "It is a fail-safe mechanism inserted by your grandmother. She did not trust Graham implicitly. She appointed a third-party advisor who has the power to veto trustee decisions if they endanger the beneficiary." I frowned. I have never heard of a trust protector, because Graham removed him from the correspondence list 10 years ago. Crane said, "His name is Silas Vance. He was your grandmother's accountant." I remembered Silas. He was a kind, quiet man who used to give me peppermint candies when I visited his office as a child. I had not seen him since the funeral. I called him. Crane said, "I woke him up at 4 a.m., and he has been waiting for this call for a decade." Crane said, "Silas told me that Graham tried to pressure him into signing a release of funds when you were 22, claiming you wanted to start a business. Silas refused because you were not there to verify. Graham threatened to ruin his reputation, so Silas stepped back, but he never legally resigned his protectorship. He is willing to testify," I asked. "He is on his way to my office right now," Crane said. "He has old emails from Graham. He has notes. He can establish a pattern of behavior. This proves that Graham has been trying to crack this nest egg for years. It is not about your mental health. It is about his liquidity problems." This was the twist I had not seen coming. My grandmother, dead for a decade, had reached out from the grave to hand me a shield. She had known. She had seen the greed in her son's eyes even then. I hung up with Crane and looked at Sloane. She was staring at her phone, her face pale. "What is it?" I asked. Sloane turned the screen to me. It was her banking app. "I was checking my credit score," she said softly. "Since we talked about the identity theft, I wanted to see if—" She stopped, swallowing hard. "There is a credit card," she whispered. "A platinum card with a $25,000 limit. It was opened 3 years ago. I did not open it," Sloane said. "The balance is $18,000. I looked at the transaction history she pulled up. High-end furniture stores, a landscape architecture firm, a wine merchant, its mom. I said, 'These are charges for the house remodel.' She put the new patio furniture on your credit." Sloane's eyes filled with tears. "I have an $18,000 debt I did not know existed." She said, "My credit utilization is through the roof. That is why I got rejected for that car loan last month. They told me I had too much outstanding debt, and I thought it was a mistake." She looked up at me, and the last vestige of loyalty to our parents evaporated from her eyes. "I am done," she said. Her voice was steady now. "I am not protecting them anymore. I am going to the police with you. I am going to report this card." This was the fuel we needed. It was no longer just Emery Parker versus her parents. It was the Parker children versus the Parker parents. It was a class-action lawsuit of abuse. My phone buzzed again. It was Kendra Shaw from the bank's compliance team. "Emery, we have a security alert." Kendra wrote, "An attempt was just made to modify the trusted contact on your profile. This is the person authorized to confirm transactions if we cannot reach you." Who did they try to add? I texted back. They tried to add a Dr. Aris Thorne. Kendra replied, "The request originated from an IP address in the residential neighborhood of Oakwood Lane, my parents' house. They were trying to insert the fake doctor into the bank's security protocol. If they succeeded, the bank would call Dr. Thorne to verify the wire transfer. And the fake doctor, likely my father on a burner phone, would approve it. I need you to sign an enhanced protection directive immediately." Kendra wrote, "I am sending it via secure DocuSign. This removes all online modification capabilities. It means you cannot change your address, your phone number, or your contacts without standing physically in front of a branch manager with 2 forms of ID. Send it," I typed. The document appeared on my phone. I signed it with my finger, pressing down hard on the glass. Access locked. Now. The board was set. I looked at the time. 7:45. We have to go. I said to Sloan, "The courthouse opens in 45 minutes. We got into my car. The drive to the courthouse was silent. The city was waking up, oblivious to the fact that a family was about to destroy itself in the public record. As we drove, Crane called again. "We have a situation with the imposter," he said. "Chloe." I asked. "Yes, Officer Brooks just called me. They picked her up at her dorm room an hour ago. She was packing a bag. Did she talk?" "She is singing," Crane said. "But she is scared. She claims she didn't know about the forgery. She says she just sat there, but Brooks showed her the multiple camera angles. The one from the ceiling, the one from the ATM vestibule. They have her signing the logbook at the front desk. That is forgery. That is a felony. She is cracking." Crane said, "She admitted that Vanessa gave her the envelope to give to the banker. She admitted she saw money inside. That connects the bribe directly to your mother. Good." I said, "But here is the danger." "Emery," Crane warned, "your parents do not know we have Chloe. They do not know we have the trust protector. They do not know Sloan is with you. They think they are walking into an ambush. But they think the ambush is just you and a lawyer arguing about a signature," Crane said. "They are going to file for emergency guardianship at 9 o'clock sharp. They will use the welfare check call from yesterday as proof of your instability. They will use the fact that you haven't responded to the settlement email as proof of your paranoia. They are going to walk into that judge's chambers with a sob story about a drug-addicted, manic daughter who needs to be saved," Crane said. "So what do?" I asked. "We let them file," Crane said. "What? I nearly swerved the car." "We let them submit the paperwork," Crane explained. "We let them swear under oath that the information in their petition is true. We let them submit the fake doctor's letter to the court. Once they submit it, it is not just a lie," Crane said. "It is perjury. It is filing false documents with a court of law. It is a crime committed in front of a judge. We will be waiting in the gallery," Crane said. "And the moment the judge asks if there are any objections, we drop the hammer. We hand over the package." The package. Crane listed the contents. Exhibit A. The affidavit from the real doctor. Eris Thorne stating he has never met you. Exhibit B. The forensic analysis of the fax header from your mother's landline. Exhibit C. The security video of the bribe being passed to the banker. Exhibit D. The badge logs from your office proving you were at work. Exhibit E. The affidavit from Silas Vance, the trust protector, detailing the history of financial aggression. Exhibit F. The confession from Sloan regarding the laptop and the credit card fraud. Exhibit G. The police report regarding the arrest of Chloe, the imposter. It was not a defense. It was an annihilation. I pulled up to the courthouse. The building was massive, stone and glass, a monument to the idea that truth matters. I saw Crane standing on the steps. He looked like a weapon in a suit. Next to him stood an older man with white hair, Silas Vance, and next to them stood Officer Brooks. We got out of the car. Sloan walked close to me. Her hood down now. She was done hiding. Crane walked up to us. He did not smile. "They are inside," he said. "They just went through security. Your father is wearing his lucky tie." I felt a surge of adrenaline, cold and sharp. "Let's go," I said. We walked up the steps. Inside the courtroom, the air was cool and smelled of wood polish. We sat in the back row. At 9 o'clock, the clerk called the case. In the matter of the emergency guardianship of Emery Parker, I watched my parents stand up. They stood at the plaintiff's table. They looked perfect, concerned, dignified, sad. "Your Honor," Graham began, his voice trembling with a practiced emotion. "We are here with heavy hearts to save our daughter." He handed a folder to the bailiff. "This contains the medical certification of her incapacity," Graham said, "and the police record of the welfare check we had to request yesterday because she was unreachable." The judge, a stern woman with glasses, took the folder. She opened it. She looked at the fake letter. Is the proposed ward present? The judge asked. My father shook his head. No, Your Honor. She is currently not in a state to appear. She is hiding. We believe she is a danger to herself. I stood up. My shoes clicked loudly on the wooden floor as I stepped into the aisle. Actually, I said, my voice ringing clear through the silent courtroom, I am right here. Graham and Vanessa spun around. Their faces went slack. And I am not alone, I added. Crane stood up. Silas stood up. Sloane stood up. Officer Brooks stood up. The color drained from my mother's face so fast, she looked like she might faint. Graham gripped the table, his knuckles white. Your Honor, Crane boomed. Elias Crane for the respondent, Emery Parker. We have a counter motion to dismiss with prejudice, and we have a few exhibits we would like to enter into the record regarding the medical certification the petitioners just handed you. The judge looked at me. She looked at the army standing behind me. Then she looked at my parents, who were suddenly shrinking in their expensive suits. Approached the bench. The judge said, I walked forward. I did not look at my parents. I looked at the judge. The trap was sprung. The chess game was over. All that was left was the checkmate. The courtroom was silent. A vacuum where the air had been sucked out by the sudden, violent shift in power. My parents stood at the plaintiff's table, frozen. Graham's hand was still extended, holding the fraudulent folder, but his eyes were darting from me to Elias Crane, then to Officer Brooks, and finally to Sloane. He was calculating the odds, running the numbers like he always did, but for the first time in his life, the equation returned a result he could not manipulate. Judge Sterling adjusted her glasses. She did not look at the folder Graham was offering. She looked at Crane. Mr. Crane, the judge said, her voice cutting through the room like a gavel strike. You mentioned a countermotion. We do, Your Honor, Crane said. He walked toward the bench, placing a thick, bound document on the polished wood. This is a motion to dismiss the petitioner's request for emergency guardianship on the grounds of fraud, perjury, and malicious prosecution. We are also filing for an immediate civil protection order against Graham and Vanessa Parker on behalf of my client. Graham found his voice. It was shaky, stripping away the confident veneer he had worn into the room. Your Honor, this is absurd, he stammered. Our daughter is unwell. This is exactly the kind of paranoia Dr. Thorne warned us about. She has hired people to create a scene. Crane did not argue. He simply pointed to the document. Exhibit A. Crane stated, a sworn affidavit from the real doctor, Eris Thorne, notarized 3 hours ago. He is currently in London. He has never met Emery Parker. He has never treated Emery Parker. He is currently filing charges for identity theft against the petitioners. The judge opened the binder. She read the first page. Her eyebrows pulled together. Graham's face went gray. Vanessa gripped his arm, her knuckles white. Exhibit B. Crane continued. Relentless. A forensic analysis of the fax header on the medical letter submitted by the petitioners. The document originated from the residential landline registered to Graham and Vanessa Parker. They faxed a fake doctor's note from their own kitchen. The judge looked up. Her expression had shifted from curiosity to cold fury. Mr. Parker, she said, do you have an explanation for why a medical professional's certification was sent from your private residence? Graham opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked at Vanessa. Vanessa looked at the floor. Crane did not stop. He was a demolition crew, and he had not yet reached the foundation. Exhibit C, he said, surveillance footage from Brightwell Trust and Savings. Taken yesterday at 14:15. It shows the petitioners entering the bank with a third party who is impersonating my client. Crane paused for effect. And Exhibit D, he added. A statement from Chloe Miller, the woman in the video. She was arrested this morning. She has confessed that Vanessa Parker paid her $5,000 cash to impersonate Emery Parker and sign a power of attorney. She states that Vanessa Parker told her it was a formality to help a sick relative. The courtroom gasped. It was a small sound, coming from the court reporter. But it echoed loudly. Judge Sterling closed the folder. She took off her glasses and placed them on the desk. She looked at my parents with a look of absolute disgust. "This is not a guardianship hearing," she said. "This is a crime scene." She turned to the bailiff. "Secure the doors," she commanded. Then she looked at Officer Brooks, who was standing at attention in the back. "Officer, do you have jurisdiction here?" "I do." "Your Honor," Brooks said, stepping forward, "we have active warrants pending based on the evidence provided this morning." Judge Sterling nodded. "The petition for emergency guardianship is dismissed with prejudice," she ruled. "I am granting the respondent's request for a full civil protection order effective immediately. The petitioners are to have no contact with Emery Parker or Sloan Parker. They are to come nowhere near their residences or places of employment." She looked at Graham. "And I am referring this entire transcript to the district attorney's office for immediate review regarding charges of perjury, fraud, and conspiracy. Get out of my sight." My parents did not move. They looked at me. For a second, I thought Graham was going to scream. I thought he was going to lunge across the aisle. But he just looked at me with a profound, terrifying confusion. He could not understand how the asset he had managed since birth had suddenly developed teeth. Officer Brooks walked up to them. "Mr. and Mrs. Parker," she said, "we need you to come to the precinct to answer some questions regarding the events at the bank." They were not handcuffed in the courtroom. That would have been too simple. Instead, they were escorted out, flanked by police, stripped of their dignity in front of the very system they had tried to weaponize. As they passed me, Vanessa looked at Sloan. "Sloan," she hissed, "you ungrateful child." Sloan did not flinch. She stood next to me, her chin high. "I learned from the best." "Mom," Sloan said. We watched them leave. The heavy wooden doors swung shut behind them, sealing them into a new reality where they were no longer the authors of the story. I turned to Crane. He was organizing his papers, his face impassive. "Is it over?" I asked. "The legal threat is over," Crane said. "The criminal nightmare for them is just beginning." "But we have one more stop." We went back to the bank. The atmosphere at Brightwell Trust and Savings had transformed. Yesterday, it had been a place of polite obstruction. Today, it was a fortress of apology. Renee met us at the door. She looked tired but relieved. Kendra Shaw was with her. "Ms. Parker," Renee said, "we have completed the internal audit." She led us back to the conference room. This time, there were no police officers, only bankers looking to save their reputation. "First," Renee said, "we have recovered the test transfers. The $4,000 and the $9,500 that were moved to the stabilization account have been clawed back. The receiving account has been frozen and flagged as a vehicle for fraud." She slid a paper across the desk. "Second," she said, "we have terminated Jason Miller. The police have seized his computer and his personal phone. He is currently cooperating with the investigation regarding the bribe." She looked at me. "And third," she said, "we have implemented the enhanced protection protocol you requested. But we went a step further." Kendra turned the monitor so I could see. "Your trust is now under a lockbox agreement," Kendra explained. "It requires triple verification, biometric scan, a verbal password, and a countersignature from an appointed legal representative." She pointed to the screen. "We have listed Elias Crane and Silas Vance as the mandatory countersigners." She said, "Even if someone kidnaps you and forces you to scan your face, the money does not move unless Mr. Crane or Mr. Vance approves it independently." It was an iron dome. My money was no longer just numbers in a database. It was behind a wall of human and digital shields. "Thank you," I said. I looked at the balance on the screen. $480,000. It was all there, every cent. I walked out of the bank into the bright midday sun. The clock on the street tower read 12:15. Yesterday. This was the time I was supposed to be destitute. Yesterday. This was the time my life was supposed to end. Instead, I was standing on the sidewalk, holding a cup of coffee Sloan had bought me, breathing air that felt cleaner than it had in years. Sloan looked at her phone. Dad just left a voicemail. She said, her voice was tight, "Do not delete it." I said, "Play it." She put it on speaker. Graham's voice filtered out into the city noise. He sounded tired, defeated, but still, underneath it all, manipulative. Sloan. Emery, he said. Family first. That is what we always said. Family first. We were just trying to keep the family strong. You girls have made a terrible mistake letting strangers into our business. We can fix this. Just call me. Family first. I looked at Sloan. Family first. I repeated. It was the slogan he had used to justify every control tactic, every guilt trip, every boundary violation for 3 decades. He had used it to steal my identity. He had used it to bribe a banker. He had used it to turn my sister into a pawn. Send that to Detective Brooks, I said. Sloan tapped her screen. Sent, she said. It was no longer a motto. It was evidence. It was Exhibit H in the case of the People versus Graham Parker. I pulled out my own phone. I needed to see it one last time. I opened the Brightwell app. The Face ID scanned my features. The little padlock icon spun. There was no red banner. There was no shaking screen. The dashboard opened. Blue, calm, ordered. My checking account balance was visible. My trust fund balance was visible. And at the very top of the screen, where the warning had been yesterday, there was a new notification. It was a small green shield icon. Next to it were 2 words, Protection Active. I stared at those words, for the first time in my life. The system wasn't working to control me. It was working to serve me. My parents had tried to use the institutions of power, the bank, the law, the medical system to crush me, but I had turned those very institutions against them. I had locked the door. And for the first time, I was the one holding the key. I looked at Sloan. Let's go get lunch, I said. I'm buying. Sloan smiled. A real smile this time. With the trust fund money, she asked. No, I said. With my paycheck. The trust fund stays right where it is. Safe. We walked down the street. 2 sisters who had survived the fire, leaving the ashes of our parents' expectations behind us. The clock struck 12:30. The day was just beginning. Thank you so much for listening to this story on Helena Revenge Stories. I would love to hear where you are tuning in from today. So please drop a comment below with your city or country and let me know what you would have done if you were in Emery's shoes. If you enjoyed this takedown, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and smash the hype button to help this story get recommended to more people who need to see justice served.